Hello, everyone. It's Bill Schroeder, and I've got an absolute treat for you today. There's someone that I've known for many years and grown to be quite fond and close to. It's Dr. Alan Knott. Dr. Knott and his wife, Lisa, own Cornerstone Veterinary Group. And I thought I would sit down with him and kind of have a conversation about what it's like to be Dr. Alan Knott and
all that.
well, I just thought that, it would be nice for people to get to know you a little bit better. I certainly have enjoyed getting to know you over the years. And well, let's get into it. How are you, Dr. Knott?
Doing well. Just surviving the cold, not as warm as you are down in the South now, but everything else is doing really well. So
yeah, it feels good. I am heading up to Indiana to see our youngest daughter, Lily, goes to Ball State. So we're going this weekend to see some Ball State basketball. But anyways, why don't we dive in? And if you could please tell us about your practices and kind of what sets them apart. What do you feel, are the value propositions or the things that you're most proud of in practice?
Yeah. So as Bill said, my wife and I own Cornerstone Veterinary Group. Right now it consists of two practices in upstate New York. Kind of our flagship or our first practice would be Cornerstone Veterinary Hospital of Clifton Park. So that is where we started. That's kind of how we moved into upstate New York. Prior to that, we were actually in Northeast Ohio, Western PA. But so when we came in, we purchased that hospital, went through rapid growth, renovation, built a new hospital. And then ultimately, we've took on some additional partners, and to the point where we've had the ability now to extend and to multiple locations. We just opened our second location, Cornerstone Veterinary Hospital of Saratoga Springs. So that's been cool. That is our every day right now is getting that one up and operational and going. But I think if there's pillars for our practice and whichever location we're talking about, I mean, that's some of the main things that we want to do is we say that we want to offer our very best to every pet. And what that means for us is we always offer A+. We want to make sure when we talk to every client, we're always offering A+ medicine, and to the fact that we then cater that to the client, but also to the pet. And so what does that look like is if a client is coming in and they really want to do the creme de la creme, explore every option, explore every treatment, yes, we're going to help you do that. If that doesn't work for you, that's okay too. I mean, we're going to work with you and we're going to make sure and we're going to tailor that option around what the pet needs. I mean, I think too often in veterinary medicine, we see cookie cutter veterinary medicine and we're not that. So it's something where we want to make sure that we're always making sure that the choices that we're making are not only what's best for the pet or for the patient, but also what's best for the client. Other things for pillars of our practice, obviously we're AHA certified. We are very proud in the fact that we are fear-free practice certified, one of only 4 practices in the country that is fear-free practice certified. So that's something that we've really went through with our team and very, very proud of that, so that we've done that. We're cat-friendly practice, and then also we went through Clear Blueprint, which is for kind of your emotional welfare for your team members. So we've become certified for that too, because we know that we're only as good as our team. And one of the main things that we always want to do is we want to do everything we possibly can to take care of our team and our team members, because we consider them an extension of our family. I know that sometimes can be cliche, but it's something that we feel that. And if we feel we take care of our team, they can take care of the clients. And so it's something that we're really passionate about that. And we try to make sure that our culture matches that.
Yeah, I understand that. You spend so much time with the team.
Yep.
And you trust them so much to do the things that the practice, the pet owners, and ultimately the pets need them to do, that it's hard to avoid that feeling of family within the environment. Some obviously it is, sometimes you're dealing with some very heavy subjects and whatnot. But your path to get to multiple practice ownership has been quite unorthodox, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think over several conversations, like this isn't how you planned your path, right?
No.
How could you fill us in a little bit about
Sure.
how you got to where you're at?
Yeah. So when I mentioned whether I came from that group practice, so the practice that we were at prior to owning this practice, that I was a partner in that practice as well. There was multiple locations there, very comfortable with it. So our plan all along when we came to New York was we purchased the practice, we would build that practice up, expand it, and then we would go on and either purchase additional practices or go out and potentially start de novo practices. What we've found and what we've seen happen, and it's been more concentrated over the last 5 years, is the mass influx of kind of the private equity sector in the veterinary medicine really has kind of changed the game. And so when I say change the game, I mean, Bill knows too, because I mean, InTouch does all of our work for us, and we're always investigating possible locations, or we're investigating possible practices we're looking at. There were 3 to 4 different practices that we put offers in over the last 3 to 5 years, and we were outbid by millions, I guess would be the best way to put it. And it's something where those offers, I thought, not only were very competitive, I mean, it would make me not want to sleep at night a little bit or take a little sleep away, because I thought those offers were high. And ultimately, those practices ended up going a different route and going towards kind of that private equity corporate route. So we were just really struggling to be able to get the financing and kind of get the pathway to be able to get into different practice. And that's how we met the 2 partners that we brought on. So we brought on 2 partners. They're minority partners. So Lisa and I still run the show, I guess would be the best way to put it. We still own everything. We still do everything. But the fact when they came in with a lot of business experience, but ultimately they did come in with equity, and they came in with different aspects of previous experience kind of in the financial world that freed up availability. And so we were able to go, and on the second location, we were able to not only buy and build and renovate that second location, but we were able to do that out of pocket. And it's something where we didn't have to go out and get financing. We didn't have to go out and approach all of that. And what that's done is that's really set us up for the future too. By having now 2 different locations, we can use that equity and use our practice base and production and all of those things to be able to go and say, hey, we're doing it really, really well, and we can add additional locations. And we can ultimately, the goal is that each location or the combination of locations is what produces, or what actually allows us to go do the next one, both financially, but also for the quality animal health.
And what's on the horizon? I mean, what are you looking at? Is this 2, 3 practices, or
Sure. So I guess I would say to be determined. I mean, we definitely have our thought process on what we want to do initially, but then ultimately that can change. Initially, what we're trying to do is like I mentioned, we're in the Capital District of upstate New York, so kind of around that Albany area and Saratoga and whatnot. We envision this area being able to support 3 to 5 practices. So it's something where we can get 3 to 5 locations here in the Albany area, kind of have that regional network. And then ultimately, we would look to grow from there. And what does that look like? I think for us, it's choosing not only the right location, because for us to practice the type of medicine we want and the type of medicine that we want to offer for clients doesn't necessarily work everywhere. But it's something where we want to make sure that we choose the right location. But in tandem with that, and this is a big thing for our entire group, is you have to have the right people to go into those locations. And so what I mean is you have to have the right veterinarians that can be that anchor in every location. In opening just even recently the Saratoga office, obviously my wife and I have a lot of input, and we're in and out of that office quite a bit. But we also have 2 veterinarians that live there, that are from there. They want to be there. They want to be in that location. and they're part of our team, and it just makes
Yeah.
sense to put them in that location. So for us, that's the big thing, is finding those key people that are great teammates that you want to build around and you want to do things with, and then say, hey, great. I know you want to build. I know you want to grow. Let's find what that looks like for you. And ultimately, if that's a different location, that's a different area, then let's build that up. And that's when you ask about the additional locations here in Albany, or in the Albany area, we have an additional other locations that we've kind of keyholed and that we've really marked as potential. The main reason we have marked them for potential is we have people that already on board, already on the team, that are from those areas that we view and they view as great people and great hospital, kind of those anchors that you need in the hospital, and being those key people. So
there's something to be said about a hometown guy or a hometown girl that has an investment not only in the practice, but in the community that's supporting the practice, right? People can feel that.
Absolutely.
And when that veterinarian is raising children within the community and can be seen as a regular person out there at sporting events and kids softball and all that kind of stuff, that's important. And it supports the drive of the initiative of the practice. A couple of times here, you used the word family, and we spoke to Lisa, and you and Lisa owning the practices. Those were things that we talked about, but it's fairly common within our industry to have husband and wife duos, right? As a matter of fact, as you know, Katie and I started InTouch, right? So super familiar with that. And I don't know how many of our friends combined, have their spouses either as, co-owners as veterinarians, or maybe practice manager and something like that. What's it like to do that? And if you're, speaking to that, what kind of advice would you give to others that are contemplating such a?
I view it can be the greatest gift and the greatest challenge at the same time. Yeah. And it's something where very rarely will you, I guess how I look at it, and obviously I think my wife views it the same way, where you get to build something with your significant other, with your spouse and wife in my instance, but also your best friend, to where you can go through and you can build it. That's the cool part. That's the gift. And that's the cool thing, to be able to build it and be able to do what you've envisioned and what you've wanted to do when you've thought about it. The challenging part is you take the dynamic of being husband and wife or significant others or whatnot, and then you add business partner to it. And it is, that can be the challenging part. And I think in our instance, what was challenging probably added to it. And it's something where we kind of had to find our way for the first couple of years of doing it, was when we were in that practice in Ohio. I was an owner. I was a partner. I was part of it. She wasn't. I mean, she was just an associate at that practice. So she had no ownership experience or whatnot. So when we started the practice here in upstate New York, it was her first go round of practice ownership and owning. It was my second. So there was kind of uneven playing fields there from the beginning.
Right.
And we're trying to figure that out and it's something where you had to figure out how that dynamic works for us. Right. I guess my official title now with CVG is, technically CEO, but I kind of view myself as hospital director more than anything else. Lisa is CMO, or she's basically the chief of medicine. And it's something where when we figured out those roles, and when we figured out to essentially stay in your own lane, that's when it works well. And that's part of training your team too, right? To where when they would come to me, team members, because part of it, they would come to me with a medicine question, you kind of have to do, whoa, time out. Did you talk to Lisa about that? Well, no. Well, then why are you talking to me? I'm not the person that makes the medicine.
Right.
You need to go talk to her, and vice versa. So she would get people to come to her with, hey, what about this for marketing, or what about this for business or banking, or what about this for facilities? Because kind of the hospital director kind of wears a lot of hats. and she would do the same thing. And now I would say now we're very good at pointing people in the right direction and making sure that they're talking to the right people. In the beginning, there was a lot of overlap. And when overlap happens is where the frustration happens. And I think it's something where when we figured out how to kind of stay and really excel at what we do best, that's what made it work. I mean, but the only thing I will say to this too, especially, I mean, if there's people out there listening to this as thinking about doing this from the beginning, there's still going to be things. I mean, there's still going to be stuff that comes up. There's still going to, just like any relationship. I mean, I will say the partners that I had in the practice in Ohio, I mean, it didn't work out eventually from us, but one of the things that they said that I wholeheartedly agree with is any partnership you get into is almost like another marriage. And it's something where so if you're already married to that person, it just amplifies it a little bit. All right. But if it's something where you just have to understand that any type of relationship is going to have your ebbs and flows, and you're going to have things that you are going to agree with, you're not agree with, but understanding the right way to come to the solution and how to get there as efficiently as possible is going to save you a lot of time and heartache. That's for sure.
Yeah. I could underscore, echo, highlight all of your comments. I just, the biggest challenge for me was always, or for Katie and I, was always putting it away. Until still to this day, it's like, I've got tons of stories where both of our girls, who are now adults, 28 and 22, they know so much about the veterinary industry just because it's just such the conversation in our house. And you wind up sleeping, eat, sleep, and drink the business in the house. And I don't know, I always say, very similar to what you said, it's the greatest worst thing I've ever done. And it's a dance.
It's 1,000% dance. And our kids are the same way. I mean, they've been immersed in it. I mean, when COVID happened, they literally lived in the veterinary. They were either in the veterinary hospital or at home. I mean, that's it, because school, for that period of time where school was shut down. But I think that one thing that we do reasonably well, I won't say all the time, but we do reasonably well. And I had a mentor tell me this a long time ago. He said, pick out a spot on your drive home. He said, ideally, it's about halfway. Okay. And he said, when you drive in the morning, he says, that's when you're allowed to turn it on. That's when you're allowed to think about when you're driving in and thinking about the business. And he says, when you drive home at night, that's when you have to turn it off. And he said, if you drive by that, he said, pick a physical spot. And so when we were in Ohio, I had that spot. It was a billboard on the bypass right around Warren, Ohio. I had that. It just was the spot. It is a stoplight on Ashdown Road now here. And it's something where when I get to that spot, I know, okay, I'm either turning it on or I turn it off. It's not perfect. I'm not going to sit there and tell you it's perfect, but it's something where it does help. It does allow me to kind of both either refine focus or turn on or turn off the focus. And so much to the point where I will even not take calls or do calls until I get past that spot. And it's something where that has helped. And so I would throw that out there to people that it's helped me. I know there's certain people that think I'm crazy for doing it that way, but it definitely has helped me.
No, I think that's amazing advice. And I appreciate the, I guess, the reality that you can't do that every day. And eventually, I mean, there are just some things you can't put away, I totally understand that. And, on those days, they turn out to be super long days, and you wind up going to bed. And, for me, it's about like, I don't know, 3:05 in the morning, that I wind up, my eyes go wide open and I'm thinking about something. And, what is it? Do you have those 3:05 in the morning?
Yeah.
And so what is it that keeps you up? What's?
I think the big things now, I mean, it changes all the time. Okay. So I think you kind of do that whole quadrant of where they say, is it urgent, but is it necessary? Is it urgent, not important versus important? I have the whole quadrant of those 3 o'clock thoughts where you'll have that urgent thought of, holy crap, I got to make sure that there is salt. Like we just had this huge ice storm over the last weekend. So like that's like a 3 a.m. thought. But then you have bigger 3 a.m. thoughts. You have a lot bigger 3 a.m. thoughts, and bigger 3 a.m. thoughts would be like, oh, am I setting this up? Am I impacting veterinary medicine the way I want to? And am I setting this up for the future of veterinary medicine to be better than where I found it? And I think those thoughts, and I've shared this with you too. I mean, those thoughts really, really took hold after COVID, to where I've always been a business guy. That's what excites me, that I love it. I love building teams. I love doing all of those things. I love veterinary medicine too, but business was always at the forefront. And it was, how do I build the business? How do I take care of our team? How do I do that? After COVID, and I mentioned it with our kids being at the veterinary hospital. I mean, my son sat and watched Lisa do surgery twice a week during COVID because it wasn't.
I've been there. I've seen it. I've seen your kids actually doing their homework on the couch in your office.
Yeah.
Like it's
so that was a big thing. And so he was always there, and it was, he never really said anything that he wanted to be a veterinarian or anything else. After that experience, he's like, and it's still there. I mean, so that was 4 or 5 years ago now, and it's still that's his focus. I mean, he's 12, so who knows, but he's 12 and he says he wants to be a veterinarian. And so that really changed my focus for veterinary medicine to say, okay, if my son is going to be doing this in the future, and he's going to be a veterinarian in 12 to 15 years, and then it's another 30 plus years after that, what can I do now to make veterinary medicine a better place for him?
Wow.
He gets there. And so that you only do things as best you can. I mean, but, and I think the old adage was, change your backyard before you worry about changing other people's backyard and everything. So that's our focus. Our focus is we want to try to make our practice the pinnacle for veterinary medicine. We want people to come here. We want them to retire here. We want every part of it. But if we can do that, and we do that the right way, it will essentially bleed out into other areas of veterinary medicine, because you're going to have other people, just the way it works. I mean, old me, Bill, you probably were potentially were this way too. Old me 20 years ago or 15 years ago, when somebody came, you were like, oh, I got to keep them here. I can't let them leave the practice. I got to love them, blah, blah, blah. Yep. New me is realize that's not realistic. And it's something where if somebody's moving, okay, let's set you up for success wherever that is. And so when we've had technicians or veterinarians or whoever that have left, whether it's locally or whether it's even moving from states away, we do everything in our power to set them up. And it's something where we make phone calls, we call ahead. I mean, veterinary medicine, the cool thing and the challenging thing at the same time is it's a pretty small family, it's a pretty small network of people. And so if there's people that are moving even states away, chances are you're going to know somebody, or you're going to know somebody who knows somebody in that area. And you can make phone calls. So that's what we do. I mean, we want to make sure, because, and it's the cool part about that is, if you do that well enough and you do it long enough, what ends up happening is it comes back around to where those people will then say they know people that then send back to you. And that's the fun part. I mean, it's just trying to make veterinary medicine better.
Yeah, well, just as well as, because of how long we've been friends and worked together, that most of my friends are business owners or practice owners. And, it's amazing that when you sit down and you actually talk about what's on their mind or what's bothering them or whatnot, at the root of it, almost always is people. Yeah. It's the people that are within the business or the practice. And I think that would be one of the most surprising things to like employees of a business or a practice, because I think that that's lost sometimes. You know, I mean, I used to joke that there's a path worn around my backyard that I've made at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, because I don't want to worry my kids, you know, but I've got a team member that I need to help succeed, or I'm struggling with a difficult decision that is going to impact the families of these people, and that's. It's really interesting that ultimately you wound up with people, because without people, you know, this, you know, I don't know. I guess there is no future, and I really appreciate you talking about the future, and I didn't really think about it from that perspective. Like, you know, it's almost cliche sometimes where people say, "I want to take care of our profession for the future," but when you're staring at like a child that has their dream and you can have an impact on what it's going to be like, that's a really interesting point of view. And, you know, while we're there talking about it, like, in your vision, in your view, what does the future of veterinary medicine look like?
I think the future of veterinary medicine is going to be very different. And I think it's going to be up to us as practitioners and people to guide it the right way and concentrate on the right things. All right. And our view of the right thing is always making sure that people are first. Okay. So when I think of the future of veterinary medicine, I mean, it can go a bunch of different ways. All right. On the medicine side, I think the medicine is so rapidly changing and so rapidly excelling and doing different things because of technology, because of AI, because of all of these different things, just on the medicine, and the AI can go on the business side too, that I think it's going to be such a different conversation in 3 to 5 years for the better. I mean, I really do. I do believe that. And I think it's going to be and that's going to be really cool. But to take advantage of that, you're going to have to staying on the forefront of that tip of the spear mentality.
I knew that was coming. I knew tip of the spear was coming.
That's for those of you that Bill and I, that's how we think. It's tip of the spear. You want to be that way. But for us I think for you to do that, you're really going to have to focus, and you're really going to have to stay up to touch. On the business side and on the practice side, I think, and I've shared this with you too, I think the next 2 to 5 years are going to be a very, very different conversation. And I think it's something when we look at practices, and we talked about the private equity influence. And I think that private equity influence is still there. It's still strong. It's still going to be there, but it's going to be very different. And ultimately, I think it may cater back towards more of a practice builder rather than what I would call a practice accumulator. All right. So a lot of the practice accumulators that you see, a lot of these larger groups, is they're going out and they're basically accumulating all these practices to get as big a group as they possibly can so they can roll it up to somebody else. I think because the multiples and the return on investment, all of those things that have changed, specifically with financing and everything else that have changed over the last couple of years, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to go out, just be able to go out and get all this group of practices. And if they're average at best, you put them in this big ball and then you sell them. Okay, great. If they're average at best, they're still average. And it's something where what you're probably going to see is you're probably going to see not only private practitioners, which I hope, but also other groups where they're building the practices, hopefully the right way, to where they're building it around people and they're making them stronger practices, and they're providing better medicine, they're providing better career paths for people, and then ultimately be able to grow that way. And I think you still want to be able to get to a point. I mean, I'm not foolish enough to say that I'm going to do this for 50 years. I mean, it's something where I know that there's a finish line at some point for us, but it's making sure that you're doing it the right way. You're taking care of people the right way, and then building that future for it. But I think realistically, and you and I have this conversation in 2 years and in 5 years, I think it would be very interesting to see where the current state of veterinary medicine is, because a lot's changed in the last 5 years. I mean,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And 5 years ago, we were talking about practices that were selling and kind of in that COVID bubble where the people were getting massive multiples for their practice. And kudos to them. I mean, kudos to those practice owners that were able to take advantage of that. And I mean, you and I know a bunch of them to where they were able to take advantage of that, and they worked for long and hard hours and everything to build that. And they took advantage of that, and they were able to take advantage and sell their practices maybe a little ahead of where they thought they were going to as far as timeline goes. But it's something where they were able to really take advantage of that price, and great. I mean, that's kind of the American dream. You want to see business owners and you want to see people that are out there that are working hard. You want to be able to see them succeed. But at the same time, you want to make sure that the people that are left in the practices afterwards succeed as well. And I think that's going to be the key.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference that I think is one of those main drivers that we're talking about over the next 2 to 5 years. The previous years, a lot of those practices that did sell, the people that were kind of left, that were still practicing, or still, they're kind of left holding the bag to where they couldn't, they were put in a bad situation. And ultimately that's tough for practices like us. It's fantastic, because there's a lot of people that don't want to be in those situations anymore. And they want to come to practices like ours and practice the medicine that they want to practice, be on a team that they love, and see growth and be able to do it the right way. So I think you transition that a little bit. But I think that's going to be the difference. I think people have kind of figured that out, that you can't keep doing that. You can't keep just selling and then people, because otherwise people leave, and people leave, and because ultimately they want what's best for them, and they want what's best for their families too. And you have to respect that. You have to be able to respect that and take care of it.
Thank you for that. So you talk about success, right? And around tables, or, sitting, having cocktails with people, or in your own thoughts, maybe people think about making it.
Mm-hmm.
Have you made it?
No.
How will you know when you do?
So my greatest competition is myself. And when I say that, my greatest competition is myself, but it's the vision that I have of myself from 20 years from now, what I think that person is. Okay. And I tell you that whatever that vision that I have of 20 years ahead of now is very, very different, and probably very much higher expectations. I'm my own worst critic. All right.
Yeah.
I think when I look at my practice, if I'm going to say I've made it, I think the biggest thing that would happen first would be my family and my kids, making sure that they are settled, that they are where they want to be, pursuing a career that they love, and doing that. That doesn't mean giving them gazillions of dollars. I mean, that means making sure that they are responsibly set up, have the skills, and have the life awareness and the ability to succeed. I mean, that would be number one. Number two is, I think it's something when we're talking about making it, it's very, very important to me, and that our team is set up for success. I mean, one of the things you had asked is like, what's your best day in practice? And kind of when I look at a best day in practice for me, if I can either teach a team member something that they didn't know, and that allows them to grow, or I can set them up for the future, knowing that they may not see it that day, but I know coming in the next months, years, whatever, that they're going to be so far ahead for knowing this and how they're set up. That's my best day. And ultimately, if I get to a point when I know I've made it, and kind of when I know I made it is when I can walk away. For me to be able to know I make it and walk away is consciously knowing that every one of our team members is in that position. That if they're in that position to be able to succeed without me, or without our team, with everything else, and they can kind of carry on, that's making it. And that's where Cornerstone, CVG, I mean, as it grows and everything else, it kind of carries itself in the future and continues to carry that vision long beyond what Lisa and I have built. And it's something where when we say that we're building something special here, we're not building it to sell in 10, 15 years. We're not building it to whatever. We're building it to last for a long, long time, hopefully a long time after I'm gone. And it's something that when I know that I would make it, that would be the make it. Making it to the point where I would get to a point where, yeah, finances are taken care of. I mean, yeah, you want to get to a point where you don't have to worry about that stuff. To me, that's not a number. I mean, that's just, I'm going to get there. I know that. I mean, you can get there in a multitude of different ways. But to know that you've made it would be knowing that you've done it the right way and knowing you've taken care of the people along the way. And ultimately, that's always, for me, it's always going to be my family first, making sure that they're set up and making sure they're ready. And when that time comes, realistically, it's probably going to be 20 years down the line, probably talking about, hopefully, maybe grandkids at that point, 20, 30 years down the line. That's cool. So that you want to make sure that they're set up, but they're set up for life and being able to handle life success. And they understand life isn't always easy, but they can handle it. And then extending that to your team, because that's the big thing. I would love a laundry list of people and veterinarians and whatnot that would say, if it wasn't for Cornerstone, I'd be here. But because of Cornerstone, I'm this now.
Yep.
And that's cool. That's something where if you have a bunch of people that have been able to take steps that they didn't even imagine, that they didn't think were out there as a possibility, and now are doing things that they didn't even think that they could and are so excited about, that's cool.
Wow. That's awesome. Again, the theme is people, right? Okay. So you hit the best day in practice.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to let you get away without talking about the worst day in practice. So you can't talk about the good without talking about the bad day in practice.
I think so. I'll do two worst days in practice. Okay. So the worst day in practice. So right now I'm not seeing cases anymore. Okay. So I'm kind of evolved into just business guy. But when I was seeing cases and when I was, whether that was, like, cause I used to be a large animal guy way back when. I mean, when I came out of school, I was a large animal guy. I think the worst day in practice as a practicing veterinarian for me would be in those rare situations when you could have gave more, you could have gave better, and you could have done better for a patient or a client, and you didn't. Yeah. And those are, when you're talking about the cases that keep you awake at night, the cases that would used to keep me awake at night weren't the cases that necessarily went bad. Okay. The cases that would keep me awake at night were the cases that, whether they went bad or not, there were cases that I could have done that differently and potentially to a different outcome. And I think those are the worst cases of medicine.
I think this is so classic. I really do, because I mean, your response, I believe, is so typical because of who the veterinarian is and the responsibility and that is taken upon them. And I refuse to believe that there was a day that you or Lisa or any of the veterinarians that work with you are not doing everything you can for the health or the well-being of any of your patients. I refuse to believe it. And you're not going to get me, you're not going to convince me or that there was that day. But I do know about imposter syndrome, and we all deal with it. And it's like, oh, I could have done better, or am I good enough to do the things that are there? And yeah, I appreciate that.
And you're
giving me another scenario too, and I don't want to miss that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right on imposter syndrome. And I will say imposter syndrome is definitely, and that's on the business side too. Imposter syndrome was more prevalent when I was younger. I mean, it's something where as I've gotten older and as I've gone through things, you kind of realize who you are. And it's something where but that would change. Business side. For me, on the business side, it's if I'm going to choose a worse day, I'll give you two. All right. One, as a business owner, where you get stuck in the monotony of the day to day and you feel like you've done nothing, even though you've done a ton. Like you probably checked off 45 things on a list.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's this monotony of the things that realistically are not urgent and not important. They're kind of in that bucket. And then you kind of look back on that day, you're like, why did I do that? Like, why did I spend my time on that? All right. So that's number one. Number two, and it does go back to your imposter syndrome a little bit, is if I see a situation where, going back to where we're talking about team members and you're trying to set them up for success and you're trying to teach them and you're trying to build them up and do everything else. My worst day is if I see a situation where we didn't do that. And it's something that, because there's many times, and this is in life, it's the whole attitude of it's easier if I just do it. It's easier if I just do it and I don't teach, or if it's easier if I just take care of it and move on. Where realistically, yes, it will take more time. It will take more effort. It will take all the above to actually teach and be able to do it. But I will tell you that the instances where you take the time and you put in the effort to actually teach and do it the right way with the team, the rewards are exponential, both for them and for you. And I can say that if I'm gonna choose a worst day scenario, like when I'm driving home or when I'm thinking about the day, it's those scenarios. It's those scenarios where I could have man, I could have taught so-and-so this. Instead, I just did it. And something where because you're trying to, and I think this is as your business gets bigger and as it grows, you're always trying to kind of train yourself out of a job, for a better way of saying it.
Yeah.
You're trying to ultimately have people to be able to do the things you're doing so you can do something else. And you can do the bigger game, where delegation is a huge part of it. And so you're trying to get to that point, because ultimately, I mean, you and I are very good friends with Andy Rourke. And one of his key things that he says is the privilege of winning a certain level of game is you get to play a bigger game. All right. And so it's something where I view that in all stages of practice, and whether it's ownership or being a veterinarian or doing all those things, the only way you can win that game and then go to a bigger game is you have to have a team underneath you and supporting you to do what you were doing so you can do the bigger game, and then so you can do the other things. And so I would say our team, Lisa and I, we've done that very, very well in certain situations. We've done it very poorly in others. And it's something where you look at it and but you learn from those. You learn from those percentages. And it's just like anybody, and I think this is any business owner, because you've shared with me instances too where you've had those times. You always concentrate on the 1% of things that didn't go the way they should, or the 1% where you could be better. You forget about the 99% of the things that are awesome. And it's something where you try in the muck of it, and in the day-to-day and the monotony, it's hard to do that. It's hard to see the 99%. I would challenge anybody on a day where you just feel defeated, or you feel like, man, oh man, I just didn't get anything. Just find one thing. Find one thing that was good that day. And realistically, there's way more than one thing, but you just find one. If you can find one good thing for that day, it reminds you of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then ultimately it allows you to kind of regain that focus to where you're not looking like, all right, this too shall pass. We'll get through this. It's part of it. But it's hard when you're in that day-to-day mentality. And so sometimes you kind of have to remove yourself from the day-to-day and be able to see it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. And the stories, and not that what I'm about to say shouldn't devalue your story, but it's been told many times over. I mean, I've got a very, very good friend that shall go nameless, but she calls me and she's like, "Hey, are you free tonight? And I could use a glass of wine over the phone." And she starts off and she goes, "I'm out. I'm done." And she was about 15 years into practice, and I've known her throughout all of her years. And she's like, "So if you want to buy my practice, I got a heck of a deal here. Come in." And she had gotten beaten up on reviews, right?
Yep.
And it was one instance, and a whole bunch of people piled on. The scenario, right? And it was like she's like, "I can't do this." And a bottle of wine later, one, I didn't buy the practice, and two, we came to the realization that you just said, that this is a snapshot of time. And when I'm speaking with audiences about reputation and things along those lines, it's one of the stories that I tell, because that realization that myself, I've cried myself to sleep at night. I literally laid in bed and been like, what the heck is going on here? I've worked so hard to get here, and I truly do care about this, and then you got to go, well, this too will pass, and miraculously it always does. But thank you for that.
It's painful. I mean, there's nothing.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, it's not. But I will tell you that in the grand scheme of it, it will pass, and it will be a small instance of what you're looking at. And it's something that I think that's the biggest thing when you're looking at different things, because as veterinarians, you hit on it: imposter syndrome, type A personality, the whole 9 yards, the whole bucket. I mean, we're all guilty of it, and it's something that you have to. It's okay. That there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, but
there's a lot of responsibility put in your hands, and a lot of decisions, and a lot of exhaustion exists, and compassion fatigue exists, and all of those things that that as a veterinarian and as a business owner you have to kind of keep at bay, because because of the obvious reasons. But while we were talking about business, you and I met by us working and doing the marketing for your practice, right? At that time, one practice, right? What were the challenges, if you can remember back then, that caused you to need to want to work with an agency like InTouch? What was happening that caused that?
So initially, when we came on board with you guys, I mean, it was a practice that we had purchased, and the practice had been there since 1989. So been there a long time. We purchased it in 2015. So the practice had been there. And you probably remember this. I mean, when we purchased the practice way back in 2015, I mean, it feels forever ago now. It had 29 reviews. Okay. So 29 Google reviews. The practice had been existing since 1989. So it's awareness of that. I mean, that's the first thing, right? Just letting people know you're there. All right. And letting people know. But then once you let people know you're there, it's telling your story. And I think where I see, and this is a kudos to you and your team, that InTouch does it better than anybody else out there, is telling the story. And it's something of telling the story of the practice and really honing in on, this is who we are, and this is our practice, and this is why we do what we do, and this is why everybody in veterinary medicine, I mean, we joke about this, and I think you even told me about this like the first month or two we're in there. Clients, I mean, I love all my clients, but clients don't know, or they assume every veterinary clinic or every veterinarian or veterinary hospital out there practices quality medicine. All right. So quality medicine with state-of-the-art technology and everybody, the space shelter down the road and the 24-hour emergency specialty AMC clinic both practice quality medicine with state-of-the-art technology and equipment. All right. We all know that they're incredibly different. All right. They're incredibly different. And where InTouch allows you to do is InTouch allows you to tell the story of who you are, what you do, why you do it. But the other part of it, and this is why Bill and I have probably become such good friends, is InTouch is our partner. And we view InTouch as our partner. And so when I have questions, or I have, hey, did you see this? Or did you think about this? Or what about this? That's a relationship that I can have with Bill, but also with his teammates too. I mean, the team that he's built around them. I mean, he has multiple people that I have those conversations with, and multiple people that on his team have those conversations with members on my team. And it's something where, as we've grown, all right, originally it was Bill and I, all right, and it kind of built from there. So I think that's the difference. Because we've had relationships with other website providers and SEO and strategy and marketing and all of those things. We had multiple different relationships. I mean, when we came on with you guys, we just did the website initially, and then when we did the website initially, which was horrid, but that had already been redone once prior to you. That we paid for, but it was something where it was very apparent to us very, very early on in that project and that everything else, that not only does InTouch know what they're doing and they're going to do it correctly and they're going to do it the right way for your practice, but they can make you a lot better. And I think that's something where in any relationship, being able to bounce ideas off each other and being able to talk and be able to work our way through that has been imperative. And it's something where there has been times, especially early on their front for bringing stuff to us, that you kind of have to be able to take a little bit of pain. I mean, I remember there was conversations that Bill had with me like, hey, what you're doing is not working. And it's something where we had to take that, because some of that was me personally doing things, like pretending I'm this marketing guy as a veterinarian, putting that hat on. I'm not. I mean, I'm not that marketing guy. So I think it's something where that has been very, and having the courage to have those conversations. And I think the reason that the courage is there is because not only is the respect level there from InTouch, but they truly want what's best. And they truly want what's best for their clients, and they're going to do everything in their power to make that happen.
Well, thank you so much for that. And, I think it all roots in I'm so honored to have you say those things. And, we deeply value the relationship that we have. And when I think about something like this, I think of the word trust, and the trust that is mutual between you and your team and my team and yours. And it's very important. It's important that when things are going right, that we understand that they're going right, and we should continue to do that. Or when things aren't going right, that we understand that too, so that we can make things better. And I'd like to say that all relationships went this way, but that wouldn't be truthful. But I'm very, very grateful for the level of trust and the level of engagement that we have. I say this now when I get an opportunity to speak with a new client, and it's not as frequently as I would like, but I stop and I'll say, and I just had this opportunity several times at VMX where I'll say, hey, you're here at the booth because you want this to work, right? Mm-hmm. And they will say, well, yeah. And I'll say, okay, there's a thread that runs through all of our successful relationships. And it's like one of those 2-ply threads. And one is trust. You've got to be able to trust that we have your best interest in mind. And 2 is engagement. Yeah. If you are not going to trust us and you're not going to show up to help us understand what's happening in the practice, well, what are we supposed to do? Yeah. And I really appreciate the level of engagement that we have, the access to information, because we can look and say like, hey, there's something broken in the appointment funnel. There's something broken here. And I think actually that was something that early on that was broken. If my memory serves me right, I think the appointment funnel was broken. And so being able to get to that, and to your point of telling the story, that allows pet owners to learn who you are, because you allow us to know who you are. Super important. Super important.
I mean, I think if I would say to any veterinarian that's listening, or practice owner, or everything else, it is literally like everything else in our life and the practice and everything else. 99.9% of everything we do is communication. All right. And it's something, what our relationship with InTouch is imperative on that. And it's a two-way street. I mean, Bill and his team know that we're going to communicate with them, sometimes too much, maybe, but we're going to communicate with them, but they're going to communicate with us too. And it's something like, hey, we're seeing this, and it's both ways. And I think the interesting part of that is it always comes down to communication. And if there is a failure, is probably the wrong word, but if there is not a success, realistically, it comes back to communication. And we say that even with our team, and I don't want to make light of veterinary medicine. I mean, I don't want to make light of any career or business that's out there. But we tell our team and our leadership, guys, we can teach them veterinary medicine. All right. We can teach them veterinary medicine. We can teach, we know what our standards are. We know what the A+ is. We can teach that. I mean, it's very, very straightforward. It's black and white. This is the standard of veterinary medicine. What we have to continually teach, and what we have to continually work with our team, is communicating and being able to do that the right way. And that is why, so one of the few things that I still do with all of our veterinarians is I'm still kind of in that dad role now with veterinarians and on our team.
Yeah.
We call it practice for a reason. I've told every one of our veterinarians that multiple times. Guys, you are refining your craft every day by communication. Yes, you're gonna change different things on medicine. Medicine's going to evolve. Medicine's going to change. You may have a new treatment here. You may have a new surgical approach there. But did my camera go away there? So when you're looking at the aspect of actual communication, that's what changes. That's what's different. And that's what will change as you're growing and as you're evolving as a practitioner and as a veterinarian, but also as a business owner too, is you're changing the way you communicate, and you're changing the way to do that the most effectively with your team.
Yeah, I love that. And I really appreciate that. There was a study that I just read, and I wish I could remember who did the study, but it was speaking to why pet owners leave veterinarians. And it took the tone of, what their expectations were. And their expectations, the first reason that they leave is price. Price is always going to be high up there on the list, especially these days. Okay. But then like the next four were surrounding education and how well the veterinarian was expressing themselves with expectations and treatment plans and providing a clear path to ultimately the pet living a longer, happier life, and the family ultimately being able to experience that pet in a healthy, happy manner. And that's, and I think we miss it. To your point of communication, it's like we need to know what to do. Right. And if we don't, I firmly believe, and you may have heard me speak about this because I ramble on and on about it during lecture, where very, very often, if the practice doesn't give the details, the pet owner is going to go out there and grab the details that they feel that they need off of Google or in another practice who is taking the time to communicate. Right. So
they're going to find those details elsewhere, and they're going to find what they look at. And I mean, one of the studies that I've read, and there's multiple studies on this now. Let's assume there's no failure in medicine. All right. Let's assume everything is good there. Let's assume your prices are right within line. It's not extreme one way or the other. Okay. If you're talking about it takes a lot for a client to leave a practice. Okay. Let's just assuming those two things are there. Medicine is fine. Cost is fine. And where you see clients leave a practice it is that line exactly what you just said. It's failure to communicate. It's failure to talk to the client. It's failure to put their needs first. It's failure to actually make them feel like you hear them. All right. And it's something where if you go in and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to agree with them, because a lot of the clients will bring in Dr. Google all the time. That's great. I mean, one of my lines with that is like, I'm so glad that you looked that up. Here's why. And I'm going to explain it. And we go through all of those things. And then they're like, oh, wow, they're really looking at it. They're really interested in making sure that that's squared away. I don't dodge away from it. I don't dodge away from things. I mean, back in the day when textbooks were a thing, I mean, I know for the younger veterinarians, they're probably like, what the heck is a textbook? I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
But I would bring textbooks in rooms.
Yeah, good for you.
I would put it right in front of a client and say, you know what, this is really cool, or this is really new. Let's look. I'm going to show you something, and you bring it in there and you show, and that's the bond that you have with a client. Because if they know that it doesn't matter what you think or doesn't matter what you do, that they know that no matter what happens, you are going to put their pet first and put them first, and you're going to do everything in your power to make sure that you come to the best solution available. They're yours forever. And
think of how powerful it gets if you've taken the time as a practice to tell your story and your opinion. Like one of the most commonly visited pages on a practice website is the services page, right? And I always tell practices to think back to all of those things that drive you crazy in practice. The questions that pet owners ask repeatedly, like over and over and over again. You're like, if one more person asks me about this, I'm going to pull all my hair out, right? Well, there's probably some gold hidden in that response, because that means that, one, the public wants that information, and two, your practice could probably do a better job telling that story. Now, right. So let's go into the scenario, right, where somebody is given a diagnosis, right? They're given a diagnosis, maybe it's a cancer diagnosis, and the first thing that they're going to do after they wipe their tears away in the car, sit in the parking lot, and they're going to Google, my dog has cancer, what is next? Or they're going to take the clinical term and they will plug it into Google. Either you are going to be there, your competitors are going to be there, or some other information source far away perhaps will be there to give an opinion. Think how powerful it becomes when you are there. You've earned your spot on Google, and the things that were said by maybe one of your associates are backed up by you, the practice owner, online. It's like, okay, I feel a little bit better because I'm finding these same answers online.
Yep.
So I agree wholeheartely. I mean, that's 100% the way to grow, and it's telling the story and providing the information to the people who need it. But,
I mean, because people are going to look for that, and I think the other part, something that you guys do for us as well. I mean, yes, you have your associates, you have your team members, you have everybody else bringing the story. Lisa and I mean, as far as owners. But then we link on our own website through blogs, through whatever, all these other sources that back it up. And it's something that, like, guys, we're not just pulling this out of thin air. I mean, this is something where these are all the instances to where, hey, this is the truth. This is everything we're gonna do. And we're trying to make sure. So you give clients the opportunity to do research, but it's research that's driven by you. And it's something where that's the key. And this, and I mean, this kind of goes away from the client education side of things, but this kind of goes into the business side of things for me too. I don't want to give any client ever a reason to doubt us, ever. Okay. And so the reason that everything that we provide that's one of the main reasons why we offer A+. Is if we don't offer a plus in a scenario like that, we'll use that cancer scenario that you just brought up. If we don't offer a plus and they Google a solution that's a plus that we didn't offer, that we didn't talk to them about, then how do we then go to that client and say that we gave you all the solutions? All right. Because they're like, well, wait a minute, you didn't offer X, Y, and Z. All right. So that's one scenario. We don't ever want to do that. We want to make sure we start at the top and we work our way down to make sure.
Hey, Alan.
Yeah.
I lost your video.
All right. Let me figure it out here.
Can you refresh it?
Yep.
No, it says you're sharing screen.
Yeah, I know. Hold on.
Hit the refresh button in your browser, maybe.
All right. Let me try that.
Oh yeah, perfect. Okay, great. I want to, you know, 3, 2, we're back. Okay, you know, let's pick this up. I want to go back because I lost you where. Hey, hang on. Oh.
I brought my Buckeye cup for you just so you have it there.
I didn't see that. You know, we were just talking about the main reasons that a pet owner would leave a practice, right? Yeah. And I thought I would circle back around providing them the information that they need and the communication structure. And, yeah. you know, there's something that we've talked about in the past that is, and I'll summarize those conversations if I can, that it's basically pet owners will leave a practice because of price, but then the reasons afterwards all revolve around communication, yeah, and helping them understand the information that you need. And, you know, we talked about Dr. Google and earning its place, your place online as a practice. Yeah. And, you know, I think that there's something special about being able to support the message of your associate veterinarians or yourself when somebody gets that cancer diagnosis and goes out to the car, yep, and they Google the diagnosis, and you're either there, right, your competitor is there, or someone far off. Right. Can you speak to that? Like, do you believe that has impact?
1,000% has an impact. And I think clients today are so much more educated than they ever have been. Okay. And it's something where they are going to get that information regardless. All right. Why not be the source of a source of truth, essentially? Be the source of that information. Not only are they going to hear it from your associate, but they should hear it again from you, whether they see you or whether you see it on your website. But like you've done for us too, then we have sources on our website that then back all of that up. I mean, through its blogs, through its resources, since we're on the cancer subject, I mean, good friend of ours, Dr. Sue Ettinger. I mean, yeah. So we have a lot of things that we use her things too. I mean, she is one of the chief veterinary oncologists in the United States. You're not going to hear it from anybody better there. All right. So it's something where you're trying to make sure that the source of truth is actual truth, number one, but number two, that they're getting it from you. And if they're not getting it from you, then if they're seeing yours, but then they're seeing somebody else, like, oh, wow, Cornerstone actually, yeah, they recommended this. And they recommended exactly what this person who's the leading expert per se is recommending. And, yep, and it goes to one of the practice philosophies that we have is I never want to give a client ever an opportunity to doubt us. And it's something where if they go online and they pull information in that scenario where they see it and it lines up with everything they're seeing, they're like, oh, wow, Cornerstone's great. If you don't do that, you now open the door to saying, well, wait a minute, why didn't they offer this? Yep. Or why didn't they go over this solution? Or why didn't they do that? And then all it takes, and I've seen this so many times, it just takes that little sliver or that little crack in confidence or trust that then a client starts to question everything else you do. And
I
it's,
cannot believe you just said that, because I use this analogy of a submarine door.
yeah,
And like, you're at depth, right? And the submarine door, somebody like jars the submarine door, as if this was possible. So the submarine door becomes cracked a little bit, or cracked open, and the pressure of the water comes in. It becomes almost impossible to get that door to close again,
right.
because of, in this case, the lost trust or the questioning that comes in. So
Yeah.
the point is, why give them a reason to crack the door and keep that door sealed, provide the information that they need? And I'll tell you, there's a principle that is really important, that Google is pretty straightforward about. It's called EAT. And it speaks to creating content that is desirable so that you can rank and search. And EAT stands for expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And if you can create content and position yourself so that you're checking all three of those boxes, man, great things happen, because Google then opens the gates to you being there for your clients.
Right. Yeah.
Wow,
And
that's amazing.
in that situation, like you're talking about there, I mean, so when you're veterinarians, I mean, yeah, and the tricky part with it is you can do everything right. Okay, you can do everything right in the hospital and do everything else, but if you don't have the information and the communication afterwards,
Yep.
it almost, it stinks, but it almost doesn't matter. And it's something where they need to be able to find that information and be able to say, and I'm not I'm not smart enough to have all of the blogs and write all. I'm not a writer. I'm not everything else. But InTouch is, and it's something where they're able to. I mean, I don't. Heck, Bill, you maybe you know, maybe you don't. We've probably got hundreds of blogs on our website now that InTouch has helped us write, and it backs up all of that information. Then we have all of the other links that we've worked with InTouch in situations where oncology, surgery, radiology, blah 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 blah. And even the simplest things of vaccines and preventatives and all of those things, having that on your site and on information, not only in your practice, but available to clients through online avenues, whether it's social or whether it's everything else. All it does is it's just brick by brick of basically laying confidence for your client. And they get to a point where they're just like, they have no reason to go anywhere else. They have no reason to look anywhere else, because every time that, because I mean, whether you want to believe it or not, especially when they start out, they're checking. I mean, and they're checking you, and they're double checking your information, and they're double checking. And on the business side, they're double checking your prices too. And it's something where a lot of practice owners don't think about that, or they kind of close an eye to it. That's one of the pillars of our practice. When I say I don't want to give clients an ability, in your submarine door analogy, I don't doubt my prices either. And something where, and this is not a popular thing in veterinary medicine, I don't want Chewy to be cheaper than me. And it's something where, because I've been in practices and I've seen practices where they do the price match, or they do the discount, or they do the whatever, okay, to match Chewy. What you've now done, and because unfortunately with clients, price does go with the quality. All right. If they go online and they're like, well, wait a minute, Dr. So-and-so is charging me X for HeartGuard, but I can get it online for $50 cheaper. Okay. Well, what else is Dr. X overcharging me on? And what else is blah, 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 blah. And so it's all those little slivers of things that I don't want our team to have to deal with. I mean, when we're talking about our associate veterinarians, because I can have that conversation every day of the week. I don't care. I mean, you can have those conversations, but you don't want your team members to do that. You don't want your team members to have that conversation. And one point that you made earlier, like if things keep coming up, certain questions keep coming up, or certain things like keep coming up, like, oh my God, and you have those moments of like, I'm going to pull my hair out because I'm going to talk about this for the 15th time.
Yeah.
You've missed 14 opportunities. Okay. So I mean, it's something where I tell our people all the time, we don't fail. Okay. We either succeed or we learn. Okay. And it's something where in those instances where we are learning and we're learning how to do it. Okay. Now we have an area of opportunity, and our team knows those words very, very well from me. We now have an area of opportunity to get better. And so if somebody brings things up to us, especially if it's happened multiple times, that's a pump the brake moment and say, guys, we're missing something here. We need to course correct a little bit to get this adjusted so that we're making sure we're addressing this and making sure that we're truly doing what's best and making sure we're getting that message to the client.
That is so dead on. You are so right about that. And, I, maybe I've shared this story with you. I might have, but I had a friend long, long ago. His name was Dave Jackson, and Dave Jackson was a Penn grad and owned University Animal Hospital in Fairfax, Virginia. Mm-hmm. Dave has since passed. Dave's probably been gone 10 or 12 years now. And I was in his practice working with him, and he had this talking about price is what I'm talking about, and the negotiation that oftentimes happens there. Yeah. This golden retriever comes in and he goes, "Yeah, Bill, I want you to step in to this appointment, to this consult with me." I said, "Okay." So I go into the room, and I think she thought I was like some, vet student or something in the exam room. And he goes, "Okay, so what's going on?" And she said, "I went down the road and I got a second opinion, and your prices are almost exactly double what they are down the road." He goes, "I would expect nothing less than that. That's exactly right." And she goes, "Well, I think that's wrong." And he goes, "Okay, so I don't know where you went, but where should I prepare your records for transfer?" And I'm like sitting there like, "Oh boy, he like brought me into like a fight or something." And she goes, "No, I don't want to transfer. I just need to understand." So here's one of those opportunities that he was given the privilege of having, right? And he goes, "If you'd like to understand, I need to take you for a walk." And he goes, "Bill, will you hold," whatever the pet's name was, So I sat there and played with this golden while they went on a walk throughout the practice. And he introduced them and showed them the technologies. And then he ends the tour back in the exam room. And he closes the door and he goes, "So now that you've got a better idea, I just need to put a statement along with this and say that the reason we charge what we do is not only for all the people and the technologies and the experience and the high caliber, of care that they're going to receive here, but each and every one of us will not compromise on the care that we will provide to this animal, knowing that there would be better available. We don't have to worry about that here. And if that's the type of care that you would like for your pets, you're in the right place. And I'd love to take this opportunity." She starts to cry. And I mean, I've never seen anything like that. And this happened probably close to 20 years ago. And yeah. I'm still thinking about this. So it's like the age old thing where we've always been talking about the negotiation that sometimes happens. And I believe that when you open the door to that, not only do you open and invite further conversations of the sort, but you're devaluing the genius that is veterinary medicine. Yeah. And anyways, you pulled a string there, and I'm sorry for that.
No, you're 1,000% right. I mean, it's the value proposition, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, if we're going to boil it all the way down to the basics, it's the value proposition. And if you ever get in a situation like that where, whether it's a records request or, because we call every records request. There's a lot of practices out there that don't. And it's something that, I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but that is an opportunity for you to learn. And it's an opportunity for us to really educate a client too. And most of the time they stay just in that same situation. But if there's ever a situation where a client is truly if they're a good client and they're who you want to be and they're questioning your price, there was a failure there of a value. You failed to show that client the value. I mean, the value could be there. The value is probably there in spades. The value is there so much so, just like in your example there with your friend. I mean, you go around and you show them the hospital and you show them the team and you show them all of the things and you get the A+ thing. But then it goes back to, at some point, the client didn't see that, and we didn't do a good job telling them that.
Right.
And at some point we failed to, and it ultimately always ties back to communication. We did not communicate that effectively enough to that client, and I guess bad on us, and we need to learn. And it's something we got to figure that out.
This is really interesting because that was at the root of how we named InTouch. So it came, the knee-jerk probably would have been marketing or something like that, but the root name is InTouch Practice Communications, because I don't care what medium it turns out to be, whatever it is, it's about transferring a story and particular brand messaging from the practice to the audience that needs to receive it.
Yeah.
Dr. Knott, you are amazing. And I so respect you and Lisa for what you do. I've had the privilege of knowing you both for many years and being in your practice. And I want to thank you for taking the time that you did today to share your knowledge with our firm and certainly with the industry. And I thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. Like I said, it's something where the partnership of what we have with InTouch is extremely valuable to us, and obviously to myself and my wife. So very, very happy to do that, and very happy to continue the conversation too. It's something where we keep working through it and we keep learning. That's always the goal.
Us too. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
You have a great day. Bye now.
Bye.